I'm Heather Vokush, and thank you for joining us for another of the Manhattan Neighborhood Network series on the broader implications of war. Today we're going to talk about Kristallnacht. Kristallnacht was a very, very critical event that happened during World War II, and it's important that we understand its implications. Now, essentially, on the night of November 9th, 1938, Nazi stormtroopers and German citizens ran amok, and they launched a massive government-coordinated attack on Jewish people throughout Germany. Synagogues were burned, people were killed, businesses were destroyed. And from that point on, Jewish people lost many, many rights in Nazi Germany. Now, Kristallnacht means, well, it can translate to crystal night or the night of broken glass, but it also literally is the shattering of the lives of many Jewish people in Germany. This is what it signifies. Now, Kristallnacht didn't just kind of come out of nowhere. It had been building for a long time. On April 1st, 1933, this is just 2 months after Hitler came to power, there was a boycott of Jewish businesses in Germany. Of course, this was organized by the Nazis. They had Nazi guards standing in front of Jewish businesses. Now, the point was to frighten Christians in the future so that they did not come to these Jewish businesses. This boycott was just 1 day, but this was a first omen that things were going to turn for the worse very, very quickly. Now, on October 27th, 1938, over 17,000 Jewish people of Polish descent who lived in Germany were deported back to Poland. But the bottom line is that when they hit the German-Polish border, Poland said, well, you can't come in here. And so these people had no home. They had no money. They had been kicked out of their own home by the Nazis. And so one of these families wrote to their son, who happened to live in Paris. His name was Herschel Greenspan. And they said, oh my goodness, we are trapped here in no man's land. Please help us. Well, young Mr. Greenspan kind of lost it. He was living in Paris at the time again, and he went to the German embassy and he shot and killed a man named Ernst von Roth. And so based on that, and this was a German man that he shot and killed, based on that, Hitler and Goebbels said, okay, we're going to take this event and we're going to turn it into something that we can get the Germans on the sides of basically persecuting Jewish people across Germany. Now, Greenspan killed this gentleman on November 6th, 1938, and Kristallnacht it started on November 9th, 1938, and continued the next day, and in some parts of Germany it just continued for days. And so essentially, stormtroopers and civilians, as mentioned before, just wreaked absolute havoc with Jewish-owned businesses. For example, more than 1,000 synagogues were burned or otherwise destroyed. 7,500 Jewish businesses were just ransacked. Almost 100 Jewish people were murdered. Their attackers were often neighbors, Now, in addition, roughly 30,000 men and boys, Jewish men and boys, were rounded up and sent to concentration camps. It was a phenomenal, horrific day and event. Let's look at some photographs of Kristallnacht. These come courtesy of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. The first one shows as Germans are passing by a broken shop window of a Jewish-owned business that was destroyed during Kristallnacht. Now, the second photo shows as residents just watch as flames are consuming a synagogue that was set on fire during Kristallnacht. What actually happened was that the firefighting forces were told to go where there were fires, but not to try to put out fires if they were affecting any businesses or buildings that were owned by Jewish people. They should only put out fires if those started to affect non-Jewish people. And so it was just a night of a situation of complete insanity. Now, after this horrific event, Kristallnacht. You know, the cost of the broken glass alone was just, it came to millions of Reichsmarks. And so the bottom line is that the Third Reich confiscated any money, any insurance money that Jewish people got to, you know, build up their businesses again. And it charged a collective fine of, in today's currency, around $400 million on, you know, on the Jewish community because of this damage that had been done. It was just insane. Now, I'm currently working on a book of interviews with women who have experienced or who experienced World War II. And the individual who is included in the book from Germany is the author and activist Hetty Epstein. Now, Hetty Epstein was in Germany. She was a 14-year-old girl during Kristallnacht, and she shared with us some of her experiences, and so I would like to read those for you. This again is a quote. "On my way to school, I passed the home and office of a Jewish dentist. All of the windows in that building were broken. I didn't know why, but I assumed it was because the family was Jewish. I went on to school. Classes started punctually at 8 a.m. At about 8:30, the principal walked in and he talked to all of us. Then he suddenly pointed his finger at me and said, quote, 'Get out, you dirty Jew,' unquote." She's a 14-year-old girl. Now, she had been receiving abuse in school because of the fact that she was Jewish, but this was something that was new. And so she didn't believe that the principal was saying this, and he came, literally grabbed her by the shoulder and threw her out of class. She had no idea what was going on. Then the other kids in class ran out, pushed her, shoved her, called her, you know, horrible names, and then they ran away home, and she had no idea what was going on. And there was only one other Jewish child in the school, and so they sat together in a classroom trying to figure out what to do. And very soon what they saw was men and boys being marched down the street, you know, with under the command of SS who were hitting them. And so she realized, oh, they must be Jewish. So basically she had no idea what was going on, so she decided to try to go home from school. And this is another quote from the book. "On my way home, I walked past the Jewish hardware store. The 2 display windows were broken. There were people milling around, laughing and joking. Some were reaching into the broken windows and taking out merchandise." She still had no idea what was going on, but she ran home, tried to find her mother. The house was shuttered. She had no idea. Eventually, she was able to find her mother and learned that her father and her uncle had been arrested by the Nazis and taken away. Now, this is, again, from Hetty Epstein. "There was no information for 2 weeks about the men and boys who had been arrested. Then, pre-printed postcards arrived from the concentration camp Dachau, which was the first camp that the Nazis created in 1933, right after they came to power. By 1938, there were several others, but all of the Jewish males from the area where I come from, Baden-Württemberg, were sent to Dachau. 4 weeks and a day after my father was arrested, he came back. He was no longer the father that I knew. He was an old, broken, sick man. After Kristallnacht, Jewish doctors were no longer allowed to practice. Christian doctors were no longer allowed to treat Jews, and Jews couldn't go to a hospital. The day my father returned from the concentration camp Dachau, he said he was beaten while in Dachau. In the afternoon of that day, he had what was probably a mild heart attack." So what we can see here is there was a build-up to Kristallnacht, but that was a really integral turning point, clearly for the worse, for people who were Jewish in Germany. So it's very critical that we understand these points in history so that, again, they will not happen again. Thank you.